Morning. I have a deep pocket this morning, and when we hear the term deep pockets, we think of something else, but my whole microphone just disappeared, so that's what the delay was. Something we'll have to explore at a later time. Welcome to Worship with Lincoln Park Presbyterian Church. My name is Beth Brown. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the pastor here. We are a community of people drawn together by our longing for a world in which everyone can thrive, a world in which all are treated with dignity and respect, and a world in which how we live together is more important than what we believe. I'm grateful to those leading worship with me today, including Bruce and Steve, Bernard, Rebecca, our choir, and Chungers Kim, our music and technology director. If you are on the live stream with us this morning, welcome. We're so glad you're here. We want to be sure that you can fully participate in today's service, so you can get to the bulletin and the hymns if you don't already have them, either on that YouTube page or by going to the home page of our website, lppchurch.org. And by having the bulletin and hymns, you can sing things and say things out loud during the service this morning, if you would like. We want to welcome all of you who might be here for the first time this morning, whether here in person or on the live stream. If you're here in person for the first time, we invite you to fill out one of the yellow cards that are spread around in the pew racks. There are pencils here and there as well. So if you can fill one of those yellow cards out and then put it in the offering plate when it comes by, that would be great. If you're on the live stream, if you can just put an email for us in the YouTube live chat, we'd be happy to connect with you after the service today. We have begun a series during this month of June and into early July on community. In this time when there have been so many books and articles that have been published about what is being called a loneliness epidemic, community is even more important, and how we gather in community, the quality of community, is worth talking about. Last week we talked about how communities cannot be sustained or even formed without intentionality, and how one aspect of intentionality has to be good communication. This week, we're going to be diving into what a caring community looks like and how we can all be a part of forming caring communities. So with gratitude for the ways that communities help us to learn and grow, let us continue our worship.
Please stand in body or in spirit, and let's read responsively the call to worship. Listen for the voice of God, naming us all holy, beloved, cherished, valued.
We believe you delight us.
Make us people who recognize and proclaim your beauty and goodness in unexpected places.
Surprise us, challenge us, transform us.
We trust in you, Holy One, to reveal to us the sacredness of everyday life, of every way of being, of every physical manifestation of your Spirit. Our opening hymn is number 487, When Morning Gilds the Skies.
Christ be praised, alike at work
seated. Please join me in the prayer for wholeness. We'll say it together. Compassionate and caring one, we exist as a church so that we can care for people in the world. In order to care for those outside our walls, we have to care for ourselves and each other. If there is disharmony in our own selves or between us, we won't be very effective in caring for strangers. Help us to be intentional about how and who we care for in our midst and outside of our walls. We have been a part of many communities that are not intentionally caring, and we want more for our congregation. Help us to put caring into action. Hear now our silent prayers. We know that we are cared for. Friends, believe the good news. Jesus Christ, we are made new every day. One of the ways we care for each other is by offering peace to one another. The way we'll do that this morning is by singing, and as the words become more familiar, look around and make contact with others. A scripture reading this morning is from Paul's letter to the church at Galatia. I will be reading chapter 6, verses 1 through 5 from the Common English Version. My friends, if a person is caught doing something wrong, you who are spiritual should restore someone like this with a spirit of gentleness. Watch out for yourselves so that you won't be tempted too. Carry each other's burdens, and so you will fulfill the law of Christ. If anyone thinks they are important when they aren't, they're fooling themselves. Each person should test their own work and be happy with doing a good job and not compare themselves with others. Each person will have to carry their own load.
Am I on, Chungers? There we go. Great. It's good to see everyone this morning. There has been a great deal that has been written about love languages and how people who live together or are married or partnered can deepen relationship with the other by learning the other's love language and then speaking that language in action. The 5 love languages created by Pastor Gary Chapman in 1992 are quality time together, words of affirmation, acts of service, physical touch, and giving gifts. While it sounds easy to just figure out how someone else feels loved and then do those things, it's not as simple as you might think. There are people who are genuinely bad at buying gifts for other people. And let me just say ahead of time, I'm not speaking of any of you, so it's safe to do this. I'm speaking about out in life somewhere. There are people who are genuinely bad at buying gifts for other people because they tend to buy gifts that they themselves would want. If that person is partnered with someone whose love language is receiving gifts, you can see where that might be problematic. Or if one person is an extrovert and loves nothing more than quality time with someone, but the other person is an introvert and chooses carefully when they spend time with anyone else, that could be tough. I've been wondering lately about how caring happens in congregations and what it looks like over a period of time. Is there an overlap between what someone's love language is and how they feel cared for in community? Or is how we feel cared for in community different from that? And do we have specific care needs based on the makeup of that specific community? Last week we talked about how community has to be formed and nurtured and sustained with intentionality. We also talked about how one of the intentional aspects of community is working on communication. Both of those are necessary for a community to be caring. Before we get into what the Bible says about caring community, I want to ask you a question. When you are entering a new community, so I want you to think about communities like church, friend groups, your work settings, a new neighborhood or living situation, volunteer groups that you're a part of. What helps you feel cared for as you enter that group? So take a few seconds and think about how is it that you feel cared for when entering a new group? I'm going to take some educated guesses here. For some of you, feeling cared for comes when people learn your name and are intentional about using your name when they see you. We call that welcome. For some of you, feeling cared for comes when someone makes food and invites you to partake, what we call hospitality. For some of you, feeling cared for means when someone takes the time to get to know you and wants you to get to know them. Relationship. For some of you, feeling cared for means being invited to receive the gifts that others have to offer and to use the gifts you have to offer others. Reciprocity. For some of you, feeling cared for means being thanked for everything you do, from giving money to volunteering to just showing up. Appreciation. For some of you, feeling cared for means someone notices when you aren't there and lets you know that you were missed. Noticing. For some of you, feeling cared for means you trust others to tell you, wait, I wrote this. I know what I mean. Fortunately, feeling cared for means you trust others to tell you when something is going on in their life. And then, no, I was right the first time, sorry. You trust others to tell them what is going on in your life. So you're trusting someone to hear what's going on in your life. And then that person follows up with you later to ask you about the things you have shared. Connection and listening. For some of you, feeling cared for means having people show up to an event that you say is important to you, maybe even something you're in or performing or something that's about you. Presence. Our youngish adult group that meets is incredible about showing up for each other's events. So what would you add to this list? What did I miss in that list of ways that you feel cared for when becoming a part of community? In the Bible, one of the places where community and how it gets formed or harmed is addressed is in Paul's letter to the young or just forming churches. The letter to the church in Galatia is one of those letters. Paul went on missionary journeys to various parts of what was called Asia Minor, which we know today as Turkey. On one of his first journeys, Jews and Gentiles were converted to following Jesus Christ. In this particular community, though, the Jewish converts were insisting that the Gentile converts adhere strictly to Jewish law, including circumcision. Well, it doesn't take much imagination to think the Gentile converts probably weren't too excited about that, so they were refusing, and then conflict ensued. So Paul wrote a letter to try to resolve the conflict, and in the letter he made the point that in Jesus Christ was freedom, which meant strict adherence to Jewish law was no longer required, but the new freedom was for loving and following Christ. In chapter 6 of this letter, we get a little glimpse of community life. Just before chapter 6 begins, Paul gave an image of what it looks like to live in the Spirit of God. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. There is no law against things like this. And then he ends chapter 5 with, if we live by the Spirit, let's follow the Spirit. Let's not become arrogant, make each other angry, or be jealous of each other. So then chapter 6 begins with encouragement on what to do if someone is caught doing something wrong. I love this because Paul obviously knows that anytime you get a group of people together, somebody is going to do something wrong. There is no such thing as a perfect person, and so there is no such thing as perfect community. So Paul opens chapter 6 by saying, if, and we can assume he means when, someone does something wrong and the fruit of the Spirit becomes a little rotten, someone with some spiritual maturity ought to restore that person to the community with gentleness. And then he says others in the community need to be on guard so they won't fall prey to the same temptation. An example of this in churches could easily be when one or two members launch an attack against a pastor. There are healthy ways to address dissatisfaction with the pastor, and there are unhealthy ways to address dissatisfaction with a pastor. There were people in this early Christian community who questioned Paul's authority to be leading a community. They stirred up others, and then Paul had to do all this work to defend himself and his authority. The next point that Paul makes is that in community, people should be willing to carry each other's burdens. The next point, I'm sure, was probably directed to pastors. It's about humility. Have an accurate sense of yourself, not thinking you are more important than you are, but also not thinking you are less important than you are. The next point is for each person to look at their own work and not compare themselves to others. And then lastly, he says, each person will have to carry their own load, which refers to the work they do and not their burdens. So that's a little snapshot of what we might call caring community. But it needs to be unpacked a little bit. If we were going to get tossed out of every community we make a mistake in, we would never join another community. So how do we allow for people to make mistakes, even when the mistake can harm other people or harm the community? Most of you know that one of the communities I joined as of last August was the Community Commission for Public Safety and Accountability. I'm one of 7 interim commissioners, and now we have about 7 staff people. I have made some mistakes in my participation in that community, like we are sometimes prone to do. I made some assumptions about someone early on, and I wrote an email to the group about those assumptions as though the assumptions were fact. I was not kicked out of the group, but I was held accountable for the repair that needed to happen. Accountability is an important part of a caring community. If people are not held accountable for their actions, the community will not be experienced as a caring one. I'm not the only one who has made mistakes as this new community has been navigated. And sometimes I have been the one holding others accountable and trying to gently restore. How can we be gentle with each other here in this community when one of us or more have made mistakes? This is where our intentionality about communication comes in. If you don't speak up about how you have been or felt wronged or harmed, there's nothing I or anyone else can do unless we personally witness it. We all need to know that we're likely to make mistakes because some days we're able to show up as our best selves, and other days we show up as not our best selves. Knowing that someone will gently restore us to community makes all the difference. This applies even in friendship or partnership or marriage. What harms a community is when someone does something that is unkind or uncaring or hurtful, and others then join in that action, and there's no accountability. And that's when fractures in community happen. How we carry each other's burdens is complex. Some of you have more burdens than others, and depending on various seasons in life, your burdens might even be too heavy for you to carry, let alone you thinking about trying to carry anyone else's burdens. Even I have my moments when it feels as if my burden load is at capacity and I can't fit in another burden. But what I and we often forget is that the goal is not for us to literally carry these. The goal is for us to listen deeply, hear how someone else is hurting or fearful or worried or anxious or sad, and then to carry that burden or those burdens to God. The intention is not that we would be weighed down with every burden shared. In any community, this would be overwhelming. As your pastor, when you share something difficult with me, I carry your burden. I take you and I take your burden into my heart. I surround you with all the light and love I can muster. But if I think it is my burden to hold and mine alone, I get absolutely stuck. Sometimes people share secrets with me that they have never shared with another human being. And I cannot make that my secret to guard alone forever. It doesn't mean that I tell other people about it, but it does mean that I give it to God to hold and shape and transform. If I do hold something that seems to weigh me down, then it's on me to seek help in the form of counseling or spiritual direction or guidance from one of my wise mentors. It's important that when we feel burdened, we can share it without shame or guilt. We can feel heard and seen, and that we know the people we share it with care about the things we're going through. That can all happen without taking on the physical weight of the burden. Sometimes we also have to create boundaries for ourselves in the midst of community. If one person seems only to share with us their burdens and not share with anyone else in the community, that can be problematic. If our emotional plate is full, it can be helpful to create boundaries around where and when and who shares with us. And it's important to know that sometimes, due to trauma or life experiences, we cannot be the holder or recipient of certain kinds of burdens. And that's okay too, because there are others in the community who can hear and hold those burdens. The next two aspects of carrying community seem to go together. Having an accurate sense of ourselves and not comparing ourselves to others is helpful in becoming a healthy community. Our natural tendency is to compare ourselves to others in every community we're a part of. So overcoming this natural tendency is part of the work for us to do. These two aspects are places where we can bring in some of our childhood wounding if we are not careful. One of the ways I was wounded in my childhood was through abandonment. I won't go into all the details, but the adults in my life were not always consistent or present when I needed them to be. Because of that, I have a need for consistency and presence in communities I am a part of. If someone suddenly disappears or becomes emotionally unavailable, I can easily feel abandoned again. And it feels personal. In communities, whether it's in friendship, partnership, families, church, or volunteer organizations, you can just imagine how sometimes people aren't consistent because they don't necessarily have to be, or sometimes they do disappear, oftentimes for good reason, or sometimes they become distant emotionally. You can also imagine how most of the time those things have absolutely nothing to do with me. But on my side of the equation, it feels like it is all about me. So what I've had to do over time is work on how and when and where and why this childhood wound gets reactivated, and then work on how I choose to respond to it. If I'm unaware of it, imagine how much I would act out in whatever community I'm in, either by leaving in a huff or spreading my anger or hurt to others, or by never fully trusting in a connection with anyone in the first place out of my fear of abandonment. Once I am aware, once we all become aware, we have tremendous choice. I choose to communicate directly and honestly, and 99% of the time, that results in good outcomes. If your childhood wound is that you were taught that you were not good or capable or worthy or lovable, you might have a difficult time having an accurate sense of yourself. Sometimes people with that wound act like they are way more important than they are. Oftentimes, they constantly undersell and underestimate themselves. Both extremes can hurt whatever community that person is a part of. If your childhood wound is that you will never be the favorite child, but will always be the outsider, even in your own family, you're going to have a difficult time accepting that you are a valued member of whatever community you're a part of. The last aspect of caring community is for each of us to carry our own load. This word in Greek is different than the word earlier about burden. This word is in reference to a task or a service. Each person is responsible for or needs to carry their own tasks or services. It seems a little bit weird given that the context is community, where what matters is how it all goes together. We've talked about this so many times in relationship to stewardship, how we share the gifts we have, financially or with time and energy and the spiritual gifts we've been given. This morning, we are going to thank and recognize our choir for an amazing year of music. Each person who's been given the gift of music or singing is to carry their own load, which means using their gift. Each person is responsible for their own gift and using it. Many of you who have gifts of singing have chosen to carry your load by joining the choir. And isn't it incredible when 10 or 12 of you decide to carry your load or offer your service by singing together? The same is true for those who have a passion for justice or for working on how we care for the earth or how we spend our money and care for our facility as a congregation, or even for how we worship. Some of you carry your load by making food for our neighbors in the shelter downstairs. Some of you do it by making food and offering deep hospitality after church on Sundays. The idea here is that we would each realize that in community, everyone has a task or service that is ours. Every year during our stewardship season, when we focus on what gifts or services we're going to offer, we also make it a point to say that because of our changing lives, we sometimes have more or less capacity to offer our task or service, and that has to be okay. Like the geese who fly in formation, we have to be allowed to go to the part of the formation where we can coast in the draft of others for a time. And then, when our circumstances change again, we can offer our gift or task or service differently. If you haven't guessed by now, I have concluded that love languages can be a small part of feeling cared for in community, but caring communities go way beyond love languages. One of the things I said last week, and is still true this week, is that I cannot read your minds, and you cannot read each other's minds or mine. If you are aware of what will help you feel cared for in this community, please communicate it to me and to others that you meet and are in relationship with here. If you feel cared for when you receive words of affirmation or when you're invited to share your particular gifts, let us know that. That's so helpful. If you feel cared for with physical touch, and when people ask you how you are or check in with you when you're here, tell us that. That's helpful. Hosmic, who is not here today, but many of you know, who is 98, has communicated to us that one of the highlights for her in coming to church is getting hugs from people. She lives a relatively solitary life these days because she can't get around as much, and she doesn't get many hugs, so she loves getting them when she's here. That's helpful to know. Even though you might have moments when you think no one here cares about you, or when you feel as though you are not as important as someone else here, I can assure you that will never be the case. Will we make mistakes and sometimes forget to tell you or show you how much we care? Probably, unfortunately. But is it our intention? No. If you will commit to communicating clearly about your needs and how you feel cared for or not, we can all live into our deepest hopes for this community. And it goes without saying that one of our hopes is always that more and more people will come and add to how we shape this community of care. Amen. I want to invite you into a time of silence to catch up with yourself, take a couple of deep breaths, and be able to reflect. I want to invite all of us to the offering this morning. Our offering, we can think about in so many different ways. It really is about sharing the gifts that we have to offer. Sometimes those gifts are financial. Sometimes it has to do with our time and energy, our talents. So I invite you this morning to give of the gifts you have and would like to give. And if you're here in the sanctuary, if you would like to give financial gifts, the offering plate is going to be passed around. And if you filled out a yellow card, we encourage you to put the yellow card in the plate. If you're online and you want to give a financial gift, we encourage you to go to the homepage of our website. There's a donate button there, or you can always send checks into the office. And then for all of us to take at least a couple of minutes and consider how we want to offer ourselves both in this community and the other communities that we're a part of in the coming week. We are going to thank and recognize our choir this morning, and I'm going to spring something on them. But first, I would like to invite them to come forward. So all of you who are choir members, come on forward. Our choir is Sarah Harpring and Sam Felt, Sophie Schreiber, Jack Donnelly, Brian Sorodovic, who's not here this morning, Steve Hunter, Barb Gibbard, Jerry Holmesy. Even though he's had many health challenges this year, he's still a part of the choir, Pat Terry, Gail Russell, and Jerry Mead. And these folks have been in training, is how I like to think of it, permanently, right? But since last September, very specifically and on a regular schedule, under the coaching of Chungers, who is not an easy coach, but is a firm one, right? And so for the entire year, they have provided us with music that has helped shape our worship, that has been part of a language that has spoken to people. In the song they sung earlier, they talked about how music builds bridges. And so the music that you all have provided has done all of that this year. And so I think everyone joins me in saying, we are deeply grateful for all of the beautiful ways you have helped shape our worship during this year, and for how committed you have been to those weekly workouts. And I know they are workouts. So one of the things I wanted to highlight this morning is that what's so weird about offering the gifts we have is that often we receive something from offering that gift. And I know you know what I mean because you all do it in a variety of ways. You're asked to go do something and you do that thing and you realize afterward that there was actually a benefit to you in doing that thing. So what I wanted to ask of the choir this morning is if there's anybody that wants to share, how has being a part of the choir this year benefited you or somehow served your heart in some way? So do any of you want to share anything?
You can be honest.
You can be honest, yeah. Chungers wants your honesty.
I'm not shy.
Yeah.
I think that as I've been part of the choir for a number of years, the feeling of community and closeness and supporting each other has grown. It's been really wonderful. And, we've gone from, starting out with a very small group of us to getting through COVID with Zoom rehearsals. And now, I think we've emerged to a place where we really enjoy singing together and we welcome anybody else who wants to join us. But most importantly, I think we all can say that Chungers has been a terrific leader, besides a brilliant musician. And we are so grateful for his patience, for his gifts that he provides us. And we're very lucky to have this community that we can rely on. For me, this year, with Jerry being sick, it's been a tremendous support, as well as, forgetting about your woes and coming and singing. So, anyway.
Thank you, Barb.
I just want to take a moment to thank Chungers for his willingness to go above and beyond and to coordinate with busy schedules to make sure that we all have the chance and opportunity to sing in the choir. And I've enjoyed this year being able to sing music from all around the world, and I plan to keep on singing because I think that it's one of the ways that I get to share my heart with others and that I get to see the face of Christ in others as well.
Amen. Beautiful. Anybody else? Steve?
Singing in the choir has brought many gifts to me, and I really, really enjoy it. I enjoy singing. My wife and daughter are driven crazy because I walk around the house singing. So I just like singing generally. But being in the choir is also this very special experience because Chungers will come up with a piece of music, and I'm not the greatest at reading music, and we'll run through it, and I'll be, missing my cue or singing the wrong note or, missing a rest, and I'll be thinking, yeesh, that was rough. But somehow, some way, Chungers firmly but non-judgmentally gets us all through it, and one of the things he does that goes above and beyond is he will record the tenor part, and I am the only tenor, so I can't listen to somebody doing it right and copy. So Chungers, for each of us, will record our part and send it to us, and so that we can practice. And then, today, there were so many mistakes I was making in rehearsal that I didn't make today because Chungers sent me a track. And there's just this sort of a hard to describe feeling when I take something that's an absolute train wreck and with a little bit of work, we turn it into something that's pretty good.
Great. Transformation is possible.
I hadn't been going here, although I was raised Presbyterian, but during COVID, our choir down the street shut down, and the choir director retired. So it was really a loss after all these years. And these guys, Sharon Stangenis, my friend, invited me to come on down here, and I thought, they will not take a mediocre voice. However, standing next to these guys, it's no problem. But I just want
Because we're mediocre too.
and he gives me a ride home. It's I can't explain it, but I think my religiousness isn't here. I have a hard time believing a lot of things, but when I sing with the choir with all of these voices, it just kind of gives me chills and grabs me, and that's the closest I can get to God.
Oh, beautiful.
Something I'm grateful for, I would say, is the congregation as we sing, or another word for that, I guess, would be the captive audience. I don't know, something about singing in front of people, to me, just like really makes your heart pump, and other people would be terrified by the nerves, that kind of thing, but I don't know, to me, I definitely get nervous every time I sing or speak in front of people, but it's like a really good, energizing feeling to like feel alive, and I think that translates to the singing, like you feel more in it, and it just comes right out of you then in rehearsals. So thank you all for that.
Sometimes the weeks can fly by, so it's a gift to have this intentional time once or twice a week if it's a performance week, to be surrounded by music and with others who love music, whether they're directly participating in the choir or, like Sam is saying, who are sharing that love with us.
Thank you. Beautiful.
So I've been singing in choirs all my life, and so it's a part of me. But this one is a very special choir. And one of the things, I find great joy in music, so it's a gift to me to be able to sing and share that joy. But one of the things that's happened since Chunker's been here is it's just so much fun. Yeah, he puts us through our paces. He works us really hard, but he makes us laugh. He makes us enjoy being together. We just have such a great time. So it's a very special community to be part of. So we welcome more, as Bob already said.
Great.
One of the things that Gail and I can do together is sing around the house. And one of the fun things that happens to us after a Sunday morning is we keep singing the anthem through the week. It's like an earworm, but a really good kind of earworm, and so that stays with us. I love how much our anthems speak to me personally, and I feel such deeper joy in what I believe when I get to sing it. There's something about the music and the notes. And then to look out at all of you while we sing and to see that you're feeling it too. It's just a powerful and beautiful thing. So thank you. Yeah.
I guess since I'm the only one who hasn't.
No pressure.
So this is my first year singing with the choir. I just moved to Chicago in July. So I just appreciate both the choir and the church at large as just a welcoming community, helping me, establish a place in the city. So
Thanks. Yeah. So the choir is an example of finding community within a community, right? Which is what we often do. We go to college and we find our smaller groups within this larger group, or we join a volunteer group and we find the group that likes to work on this part of the garden, and we sort of, create a community within a community. And I think the choir, you all have been such a good example of that for us, because you have frequently invited all of us to sing with you, which I'm sure brings up terror for some of us. But you're keeping the door open in doing that. And that's what we're after in all of the communities within communities, is how do we keep those doors open for others so that everybody knows anybody who wants to do this thing can do this thing. And you've been a good example of that. So I want to thank you again. I think we all want to express our appreciation to all of you. And we can't wait until you're back in September. We know you're going to rest this summer. You all can sit down. I want to direct your attention to the calendar section of the Bulletin. There's a lot going on. I also, I want you to notice there is a Pride Month movie night and potluck, so be sure to read about that. That's coming up this week. And I have a few other invitations. So once again, I want to invite you. You can see on the back that we have our asylum fund, what do you call that? You know, what is this? It's not an ad, it's there's a word for it. Anyway, it's what? An announcement, a flyer. We have a flyer. We have a thing that you can post on social media. An appeal, right. So I'm coming to you again to ask you if you would be intentional about sharing this with your networks, because I know there are many people, not only in Chicago, but around the country, who are trying to figure out how they can also help with the current migrant crisis that's going on. We now have 2 families that are living here in this building with us that we are supporting financially. So we're trying to grow our own asylum fund to about $14,000. We're currently at about $4,500. So if you can share this on social media, if you can email it to friends and family that you think would want to participate in this effort, please do that. And again, Shannon in the office can give you something that's very easy to cut and paste into whatever you're going to use it in. We want to try to beef up our own fund as we continue to support our families. So thank you for your help with that. We do still need a queen mattress and a bed frame if you have one or you know of somebody who's getting rid of one. Also, St. Sabina, the faith community that we do a lot with, is doing their annual summer Peace March kickoff, and it's this Friday, June 16th at 7 p.m. There is a sign-up sheet on the back table because we want to find out who wants to go, and of the group of people who want to go, who can drive and who needs a ride, so that we can make sure everybody who wants to get there can get there. It's always an inspiring event. This year I know they have a drumline coming. Mayor Johnson is speaking, lots of other really inspiring speakers. And some of you might remember a young woman named Alana, who was a student at DePaul and attended here regularly about 5 years ago. Alana had a couple of brain surgeries while she was here, and we went through those with her. She's coming back in July of this year with her fiance, which is exciting, but she has to have another surgery, and she needs housing for about 3 weeks during the process. So if you know of anyone who would be willing to let her and her fiance stay in their home for a week or 2 or 3, everything helps with the huge costs involved for her. So if you know of a situation that could work, please let me know after worship. I can definitely vouch for her. This week, I am available and in the office on Monday and Tuesday, but will not be available or in the office on Wednesday or Thursday because our commission is going to be doing superintendent interviews. So please pray for us as we do deep discernment and this important work. And now I invite you to stand in body or spirit so we can sing number 367, and it's pronounced Jesu, Jesu, fill us with your love.
Jesu, Jesu, fill us with your love, show us how kneels at the feet of his friends, silently washes their feet, master who acts as a slave to them. Jesu, Jesu, fill us with your love, show us how to serve the neighbors we have from you. Neighbors are rich and poor, varied in color and race. Neighbors are near and far away. Jesu, Jesu, fill us with your love, show us how to serve the neighbors we have from you. These are the ones who we should serve, these are the ones we should love, all our neighbors to us and you. Jesu, Jesu, fill us with your love, show us how to serve the neighbors we have from you. Loving puts us on our knees, serving as though we are slaves. This is the way we should live with you. Jesu, Jesu, fill us with your love, show us how to serve the neighbors we have from you. Kneel at the feet of our friends, silently washing their feet. This is the way we should live with you. Jesu, Jesu, fill us with your love, show us how to serve the neighbors we have from you.
Please join me in the sharing of our vision for the week. Go out into the world in peace, have courage, hold on to what is good, return no one evil for evil, strengthen the faint-hearted, support the weak, and help the suffering. Honor all people, love and serve God, rejoicing in the power of the Holy Spirit.
And as we go out from here today, as we go back out into the world, which is where we belong, let us go singing, and let us sing of the light that Christ brings to us and that we then hope to take out into the world. So let us sing our benediction.